I like Joshua. He's just too big. He doesn't care about the trash talk or any of that. He just wants to go in there and he wants to beat the living crap out of Jake Paul. Welcome back, everyone. This is Bando's Breakdowns. My name is Zain Bando, your host, and this is the final episode of the show for the year that is 2025. I hope you all are doing well on this Friday afternoon, right before the college football playoff is set to begin. We went over predictions for those last week, so for those of you who have not been in the know about who I have going to the title game, you can do so and check that out from this past week. We won't really be going too deep into that, but we have a fun show. We have a good show, so let's get started without further ado. Just a few quick reminders before we do so, though. Listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. It would be very much appreciated if you guys put me in your RSS feeds that way you don't miss a single episode. And these drop on the audio-only side at midnight Eastern every single Friday during the BB season, which is for much of the calendar year. So for those of you who don't want to wait for the video version, which usually airs at 3 Eastern, noon Pacific, this week it's noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific due to football forecast premiering, given that we have Saturday football this weekend. You can check that out at that special start time. But usually when it comes to audio, the audio will premiere every single week at midnight Eastern on Fridays. So for those of you who are getting up and getting ready for the day and choosing to listen to the audio-only version, I commend you for doing so. I think that that's awesome, and I selfishly think it's an awesome way to start your day. I really, really appreciate all of you guys who are tuning into all of that stuff and so much more. So with that out of the way, let's continue. So, of course, for those of you who've never heard of me before, I am Zain Bando, a sports journalist and an ETB Network co-host. In regards to network contributions, I host this show. I'm a co-host for Forever Power 5, a co-host for ETB Sports, a contributor to the football forecast, and a bunch of other things here across the network. And then in regards to writing, do a ton of that stuff. College football, college basketball, UFC, et cetera, et cetera. We're on a monster pace at the moment. At the time that we're recording, there's 97, count it, 97 new pieces of content in the first two weeks and a couple days, if you will, across all the sites I write for. So I'm a Google search away if you want to check out any of the latest info in regards to my niches, as I really do treat this as an extension of most of the written work that I do, as a lot of the topic ideas that I formulate for this show are things I've already written about. So if you want my true opinion on these things and not just a journalistic take, you come to the right place. I don't say it enough as much as I should, but there you go. So there's that. That's a little bit about me, and let's get into it. So Zain's overview. It's going to be a good show this week. Zain's overview. It's going to be a very rapid fire show. We're going to do a lot of college football and NFL related content this week. We have a few major things to go over this week that are going to be very, very important. And I'm excited to cover those with you guys. What we're going to be discussing today are a bunch of the bowl games that are coming up regarding the ones in the Big Ten. There are 12 Big Ten teams that made bowl games this calendar year. So I'm excited to talk about those. And I'm also excited to preview some of these games, or we're going to go through one of them in particular, but I'm excited to give you a broader preview of some of these games moving forward, because I think some of these games are really good, and some of them I think are a little bit subpar. So we're going to talk about those. We're going to talk about Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman Trophy. We're going to talk about what's going on with Michigan, if I think Michigan has a chance against Texas after what's going on with Sharon Moore and all that. We will recap UFC Vegas 112, and we will also go over some different things just in regards to the end of year stuff and just kind of what's ahead for the show itself. And I think it'll be overall a fun year for BB in 2026. So stay tuned for all that and so much more as well um, as we move right along. But this show is going to be very, very interesting because, the end of the year, you kind of got to put a bow on things and you don't have a ton of time to really encapsulate how good the year was until you sort of get to that almost moment in your head where you're like, oh yeah, this is in fact the very last show. And we will get into what the new schedule or the first episode back in 2026 will be. So stay tuned for that later in the show as well. And yeah, excited to get started. So let's do that right now. So getting started with the show, Fernando Mendoza, Indiana Hoosiers quarterback on the number one team in the nation, wins the Heisman Trophy, becoming the first Indiana player to ever do so. You could not have asked for a better winner. You really couldn't have. I mean, Fernando Mendoza comes from Cal Berkeley, a two-star high school recruit. No one really knows who he is, and all of a sudden he comes in and he's just this magician. He's a wizard. He makes all these incredible throws. They've won every single game. His offense is playing really well, and he just knows when to make the right throws in the right situations. And he's just extremely, extremely humble. Really cares about his family. Really cares about his teammates, and really cares about the people around him. I'm really, really happy to see what Fernando Mendoza has been able to do because this is no disrespect to last year's Indiana team. They were a very good team, but this guy has come in and transformed the quarterback position and the standard in Indiana like never before. I mean, every single week he does something that's more unbelievable than the week before. And this guy is anything but hype. I was all hard on this kid. Oh, he's going to get exposed at some point. Oh, it's going to be the Oregon game. Oh, it's going to be the Illinois game. None of that even remotely occurred. He's the man. I got to give it to him. I hope the Rose Bowl is as advertised because this team is good enough to go to the national championship. I said it this past week. I'm going to keep saying it. We still have a ton of ample time before the college football playoff. But if you want to talk about a success story, this guy's been a success story and then some. I think it's truly awesome, and I think he deserves all the love in the world. So shout out to Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman Trophy, putting Indiana on top. Huge springboard for the Hoosiers as they get ready for the Rose Bowl. If the Hoosiers win the Rose Bowl, the college football playoff run they're about to embark on is going to be unbelievable. So just stay tuned for what's ahead because I think personally, I would love to see Indiana versus Ohio State. I said it this past week. That is my national championship pick because I did a bracket already, and I really hope I'm correct. Obviously, the playoff begins tomorrow, and of course, Indiana's not in it because they have a bye as the number one overall seed, but they will be a team to look out for 100%. And I'm excited to see what the Hoosiers are going to be able to do moving forward because they have the talent to make a really deep run. Let's talk about the final Heisman votes. So, Jeremiah Love is obviously going to the NFL draft. He was in the running. Diego Pavia was also in the running. But the one I want to highlight, though, and the disrespect shown by the Heisman voters, and I'm not one of them, so I can openly speak about this. I'm not going to get flack for it because I don't know any of the voters on a great personal level. So I think me saying this constructive criticism is not really anything indicative of me saying anything bad. It's just more so my opinion. Julian Zain, highly, highly disrespected, in my opinion. First year starter at Ohio State, was obviously in the system before when Will Howard was there, but didn't really see the field. And now he's come in and he's made a name for himself. I mean, that kid is a stud. I mean, he just hangs in there. He throws the ball. He's super quiet. He's super confident. He said after every win, the mission's not over. And he even admitted after the Big Ten championship game that he needed to play better. And I don't know, man. I think you got to reward the guys that are in the playoff. And the fact of the matter is, Diego Pavia is not in the playoff. Jeremiah Love, despite him going to the national championship game last year, is not in the playoff. And Julian Zain and Fernando Mendoza are. I think it's pretty simple. Not only do you have to reward these guys on individual talent, but you got to see the teams that they're on. He had Cardinal Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Could you imagine if both of those guys were 100% healthy the entire year, as opposed to starting to break down near the end of the season? And yes, they still won the Michigan game, but could you imagine if those guys were 100% healthy, like as in 100%, no concerns about injuries, no speculation from Ryan Day that they will or won't play or anything like that, because that was a huge storyline for 48 hours a couple weeks ago. I mean, you can't even begin to tell me that that isn't a legit argument. So I think Julian Zain was the most screwed out of all these guys. Diego Pavia, of course, deserves all the credit in the world. He's a great quarterback, but his actions after the fact of this whole thing didn't help his cause. I spoke about this very openly on the newest and final edition of ETB Sports with Nick Morgeson, that if he would have just played it cool and everything was fine, it wouldn't have been a huge blow up. So, the fact of the matter is this: Diego Pavia, I think, was overvalued in this Heisman race. I think Julian Zain should have been second, not fourth. And if I would have done it, it would have gone Mendoza, Zain, Love, and Pavia. It's as simple as that, because Jeremiah Love was the best running back in the country, and it wasn't even close, in my opinion. And you can't tell me, you just simply cannot tell me that Julian Zain should be undervalued as opposed to Diego Pavia, who didn't win the two biggest games of the season. It's as simple as that. He didn't win the two biggest games of the season, and if he would have won one of them, we would be having a different conversation. But you got to reward the guys that make it to the championship game, and two of the guys did, and one of them lost, and the other guy won, and it was a close game, and it was exciting, and it was viewed by millions and millions of people. It broke records that were unfathomable going into the game. Like, I just think these voters are not seeing the big picture here. And to me, to not even put Julian Zain number two, to me is disrespectful to, and I hate to use this phrase, but it makes sense here, the body of work that Ohio State has put together is due in large part to how good their quarterback is. And yes, I know the defense has balanced them out, but holy cow, guys, you can't even begin to tell me that Pavia is better than Zain, because I don't see it. I simply don't see it. And they're more than likely going to win the bowl game. I'm not worried about that. They should win their bowl game. But if you want to talk about Diego Pavia as a quarterback, man, you were on a team that didn't make the playoff. It should say something here. I think he was too overvalued, but that's beside the point. Let's talk about the Bears now. The Bears bounced back. Huge win this past Sunday against Shadur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns. And people were scared about this game, and people were really nervous because the Browns have played better as of late. But guys, let's be real here. This is the Bears against the Browns team that's in the toilet. They're going to need a new coach more than likely. I don't think Kevin Stefanski is the answer there. But in discussing the Bears, though, they're winning the games they're supposed to win. You can't ask for anything more in Chicago right now. They are doing what they set out to do when Ben Johnson was hired, which is dominate the NFL. And that's essentially what they've done. I think it's now 10 of 11 that they've won, or 11 of 13 or something like that. Only loss in there being to Green Bay, while the other one is to Detroit. Right? So, and then you look, and then what was it? Oh, and then the other one, yeah. And then of course the other one. So far, all three losses have come in the division, which is crazy to think about. Detroit, Minnesota, and Green Bay, all the first time that the Bears played those three teams, which is crazy, and they have a chance to get two of those games back in the final couple weeks of the year. But this is a game where the Bears just dominated. They dominated everywhere. They dominated defensively. Caleb Williams threw some insane balls, some balls that I didn't think he would have a chance to get in there a year ago. He's threading the needle like it's absolutely nothing. So I got to give them a lot of credit. This was a great win for Chicago. Cleveland is just a complete mess. The season needs to end very soon because they're not going anywhere fast at all. It's a complete mess, and I just think this is a game where the Browns just needed to get through it, and they did. And they got pummeled. They could have gotten shut out, but they didn't. And both teams move on. And the Bears specifically are moving on to the biggest game that they've had since the year 2018. So, need I say more? Saturday night, Soldier Field. I know a bunch of people that are going to this game. I'm jealous I'm not. By the way, if you want to get a ticket to this game at the time that we're recording this, cheapest ticket to get into Soldier Field right now on SeatGeek. And well, I'm not endorsing SeatGeek, but SeatGeek, if you're watching and you want to sponsor the show and myself and give me a promo code, I would be very interested. Do a promo code Bando or something like that for 20% off. SeatGeek ticket prices are $400 plus as of the time we're recording this. This will release on Friday, or this is being released on Friday. So there's a good chance that those prices will change moving forward. But as of right now, that might be the cheapest ticket you can get to get into the Packers game. And we're talking grandstands. We're talking standing room only. You won't have a place to sit, et cetera, et cetera. You guys, you might be better off watching this one at home. I'm just saying. I have the TV above me. I already know where I already know where I'm going to be watching this game. But I'm just saying, for those of you who are interested in going, get on that soon if you're not already on it. I bet you most of you, once they announced what time the game was, you were already on it, and some of you probably had tickets as early as early as, who knows, October or September. But nonetheless, let's talk about the game. So the big storyline in the game is the division title implications. So I'd be glad to go through what these actually mean because I have it directly from NFL Communications in my email inbox here. Let's go through this for 1 second. Okay, so NFL Week 16 playoff scenarios. All right, let's talk about the NFC. So the Bears can clinch a playoff berth and potentially the division championship. I don't know. I think it's just a playoff berth, but I could be wrong. Hang on. Yeah. Yeah, so the division won't be wrapped up according to NFL Communications, but it'll be close. It'll be clinching a playoff berth with a win against the Packers plus a Detroit loss, or if the Bears tie and Detroit loses, the Bears are in the playoffs. Green Bay can also get in the playoffs with a win and a Lions tie, or if the Packers tie and the Lions lose. So it's the same scenario. Insert team that you'd rather see in said scenario here for Saturday night. So obviously a big spot, playoff implications for both teams. Let's take a look at what the NFC North scenarios are, though, because it'll be the last time we'll get a chance to talk about these in a formal show setting. All right, let's take a look here. All right. So this is according to the Bears themselves and Larry Meyer. All right, here we go. So this is it. So here is the division championship scenarios for the Bears, according to Bears.com. So with a victory Saturday night, the Bears would capture the division title if they win one of their final two games at San Francisco, which is a week from Sunday, I'm pretty sure, or at home against Detroit. That's week 18. The Packers lose one of their final two games against the Ravens or the Vikings, and the Lions drop one of their next two games against Pittsburgh or at Minnesota, because technically there's a scenario where Detroit can still make the playoffs. We can even go through that in just a second, because we're going to be talking about the NFC playoff picture, or the NFL playoff picture that is at large as well. So in fact, as I'm getting this ready, I will go through the rest of them. So those are two for sure. But what I think is very interesting are the next scenarios I'm going to give you as well, because I think these are going to determine quite a lot as to what could may happen seeding wise for the Bears. So before we get into that, so more scenarios though, um, the Bears can win the NFC North if it wins, if they win out, even if they lose to Green Bay. So this is what we need to happen. So the Bears could win their final two games and Green Bay loses one of its final two. This is assuming the Bears somehow get swept by the Packers. Okay. Or they split their last two games. The Packers drop their final two matchups and the Lions lose one of their next two contests. And there's even another caveat where even if the Rams don't, or not Rams, even if the Bears don't win the division, they can still make the playoffs as one of three wild cards. All three NFC wildcard teams will come from the NFC North and NFC West, meaning that six teams are competing for five spots, two division champions, and three wildcard teams. The Bears at 10-4, the Packers at 9-4-1, the Lions at 8-6, the Rams at 11-3, and Seattle at 11-3. And at the time that we're recording this, the Rams and Seahawks have yet to play each other. That's the Thursday night game. But by the time you'll be listening to this, that game will already be over. So, in a nutshell, whoever wins that game will be in first place in the NFC West and will control their own destiny in regards to who wins the division title at the end of the year. So, a lot at stake, a lot to unpack there, but I really like the Bears to win this game. I think it'll be a great game. 35-31. No Micah Parsons for Green Bay is bad news for a defense that looked lights out at the beginning of the year. I think the Bears figured it out and finished the game, and I think that post-game handshake between Ben Johnson and Matt LaFleur was one that I don't think Ben Johnson was very happy about. So something to bear in mind there. I think there's some bad blood brewing, and it'll come to a halt in Chicago Saturday night. And I have plenty of friends who are Packers fans, and I love them dearly. In fact, I love one of them so much that I don't know what I would do without her. But on Saturday night, it's the Bears against the world. I think the Bears win. I think the Bears get into the playoffs and hopefully win the division, which would mean hosting a playoff game in the first round, which honestly would not be that all that bad. The Bears need a home playoff win. They haven't won a home playoff game in 14 years. Time's going to change. It's been too long since the Bears were good. And yeah, and by the way, I want to go through another scenario. Let's see. I want to go through the wacky scenario that would mean that the Bears could maybe miss the playoffs, which is still there. So let's talk about the gloom and doom scenario. All right. So the Bears could still miss the playoffs even if they beat the Packers in week 16, which is crazy. So this is what we need to happen. So first and foremost, the Lions would need to win their final three games, which are against Pittsburgh this weekend, the Vikings next weekend, and the Bears to open up 2026. All right. It seems highly unlikely that Detroit beats both Pittsburgh and Minnesota, which would set up a dramatic season finale. This is according to BearGogglesOn.com, which is a fan-sided Chicago Bears site. Pretty easy to digest. I figured we would go through that. Shout out to the author on this. He did a nice job. Ryan Heck, and shout out to you. You lay this out very well. All right. Secondly, the Bears would need to lose their final two games, which would come against the 49ers and, of course, the Lions. The 49ers are not to be taken lightly as they are well within the playoff picture. All right. So to recap, in order for the Bears to somehow, by some miracle, which given the Bears' history, it wouldn't be all that surprising, but given how good the Bears have played this season, it looks highly unlikely. But by some chance, the Bears miss the playoffs, you would need the following things to happen in order for this to come true. The Lions would have to beat the Steelers, Vikings, and of course Bears. The Bears would have to lose to the 49ers in Detroit, and the Packers beat the Ravens and Vikings. So the scenario is simple. If the Bears win one game, essentially they're in. If they lose all of them, they're out. So Bears got to win Saturday night. put all this mess, missing the playoffs crap to bed. If you win Saturday night, none of this matters. So give me the Bears 35-31 over Micah Parsons, Jordan Love, and the Green Bay Packers. Speaking of the NFL playoff picture, let's talk about the NFL playoff picture because it's going to be a fun NFL playoff picture. And it's going to be one of those where I think there's a lot of parity. So the NFL looks a little weird right now. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that the Kansas City Chiefs would be eliminated from the playoffs before Christmas, I don't know if I would have believed you. So Mahomes is done for the season. The Denver Broncos look like they're reeling right now or rolling at the moment. And of course, you got to take a look at the elephant in the room, which is the Patriots. Even though the Patriots lost to the Buffalo Bills this past week in a wild, wild game, the Patriots still have some life. So New England can clinch a playoff berth with a win, a Colts loss, or a Houston loss. All right. So that's how the Patriots can get in. The Chargers can get into the playoffs with a couple of things. They got to win. The Colts can lose. Houston can lose. Or the Colts or Houston could lose or tie, barring what scenario you care about. The Jaguars could clinch a playoff berth with a win, a Colts loss, a win or a Houston loss, or a combination of a Jaguars tie and a Colts loss, or a Colts tie and a Texans loss. And then the Eagles can clinch the NFC East with a couple weeks to go as long as they just beat the Commanders, or if the Cowboys lose to the Chargers, not including ties. So there's that. The only way, by the way, that Dallas can get in is if the Eagles lose out, which would mean losing to the Commanders, losing to the Bills, and then losing to the Commanders again, and the Cowboys winning out, which would include some very tough games. I think it's the Chargers, the Chargers, the Ravens. I'm gonna double check, but I'm almost positive it's tough schedule. So let me just look. Final 3 games of the season for Dallas. Okay, so it's the Chargers, the Commanders, and the Giants. I think Dallas can win at least 2. The question mark is going to be, can they beat this Chargers team, because the Chargers are awesome. So there's that. But that's essentially the NFL playoff picture. All right, UFC Vegas 112. We went on a generational run this past weekend. We won every single fight except for one fight. And then, of course, there was one majority draw in there, or unanimous draw, however you want to quantify it. Because, of course, there was. But nonetheless, though, a fun card. Manel Kape knocks out Brandon Royval in the final main event of 2025, the final UFC main event on ESPN ever. It was on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. And this was overall a good card. I think you had a lot of prospects on this card that were fun, that were exciting. Had a lot of nice finishes. Steven Asplund was one that stuck out, but the main event, though, Manel Kape, I didn't think he could do that to Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval had never been knocked out before. And that's one of those where you're like, oh, okay, like maybe, maybe this is one of those spots where, Kape doesn't fight very well and he goes in and he gets exposed. Well, no. He went in there and he made it look super easy. So overall, fun card, a very interesting and exciting card, but one of those where, you're probably going to forget about it in the grand scheme of things because, I don't think a lot of people fully care. I mean, it was one of those fight night cards where, it's kind of like whatever, and that is what it was. So there's that. That's going to cap off the UFC schedule for 2025, and we finished the year with 290 plus wins. I think it was 291 and 223 for the year. So overall, it was a solid year on picks. It was above 50% for the UFC. So excited to see what we can do in 2026. All right. Tonight, it's Judgment Day on Netflix. Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua in the main event. I previewed this fight on the MMA Outsiders' most recent episode 151, with my co-host Jack Gold the other day. Um, and yeah, I just think Anthony Joshua is going to win. I think I love my guy, but I think he's a little bit delusional. I think he's caught up in the Jake Paul hype. We're talking about a former heavyweight champion here in Anthony Joshua, and you want to talk about just the weight discrepancy is ridiculous. The I don't know, just the lack of care. I mean, you can get into this fight for under $100, and I don't know. I don't think it's been promoted all that well. And I don't know. I just feel like there's something wrong with a fight like this where we should be talking about bigger fights. And unfortunately, the next topic we're going to get into briefly is, a guy who was thought to bring big fights in 2026 is going to be a non-factor for a shocking reason. And this is just one of those fights where to me it's filler. There's so many other things at the moment that people care about, and it isn't this because there's no purpose for it. There's no stakes to this fight. No one is going to be the stock is not going to be elevated if Anthony Joshua beats Jake Paul. The narrative, if he does that and he knocks him out, is it's going to be the same narrative that people had going in, which was he did what he was supposed to do. Now, if Jake Paul somehow beats Anthony Joshua, then you're like, oh, okay, now it's time to really not doubt him anymore. But this is a different beast. This is a different fight. I like Anthony Joshua within the first 4 rounds. It'll probably be the first or second round, though. Haven't made an official pick yet, but I like Joshua. He's just too big. He doesn't care about the trash talk or any of that. He just wants to go in there and he wants to beat the living crap out of Jake Paul in Miami tonight. And I think he will do just that and then some. So give me Anthony Joshua. All right. Terrence Crawford surprisingly retires, better known as Bud. Huge news. Obviously, he went on a social media rampage because of the missing commission fees or whatever it was. And again, this is just another scenario where you just can't have nice things in boxing, guys. You did that whole Canelo fight on Netflix, which he won. You can't blame him for walking away, but then it's like, now what does boxing ever look forward to? I don't know. Maybe he jumped the gun. Maybe he was just too upset. I want to believe that he was just too upset and he's going to take back what he said and he's going to be an active fighter. But the way he made it seem was that it's not going to be the case. And I think that that's really disappointing. So with that being said, I wish Bud Crawford the best, and I look forward to seeing what his immediate future holds because I think it'll be very interesting. All right. Final couple of topics. Liberty Mutual Music City Bowl, Illinois versus Tennessee, December 30th. I will be in attendance. It's the final Illinois football game of the season. Illinois looking to clinch a 9-win season once again for the second year in a row. It's Brett Bielema's third bowl game in 5 years. He's 1-1 so far, taking on a Tennessee Volunteers team that looked early in the year like a fringe playoff contender, and they fell a couple of games to some very good teams in the SEC. And since the opt-outs are coming out and Luke Altmaier is set to play, opt-outs so far at the time that we're recording this for Tennessee, it's Arian Carter at linebacker, Chris Brazil, who I was excited to watch play, and cornerback Tremont McCoy. They're going to be out for the Volunteers. My bad, I had the wrong tackle. J.C. Davis is going to be opting out, and Gabe Akis will also be opting out for the Illini. Those are the only two that Brett Bielema knows of that will not be playing that game, but I think they will be in attendance at the bowl game, though, so that's a positive. But I just think Illinois can win this game. I really do. I think they're confident enough that they're better than Tennessee in some areas. And you mean to tell me that Luke Altmaier in his final game as a college quarterback, and you got most of Starkville, Mississippi coming to Nashville to see that game? I don't see how he lets his people down. Give me Illinois. I'm going to say right now, way too early score prediction. I'm going to say 38-31. I think it's a shootout. I think the over comes into play here. I think it's one of those games where there's going to be a lot of scoring, not much defense, and maybe a turnover makes the difference. But most of the year when Altmaier has the ball, I'm not usually worried about Illinois' chances offensively. So I like Illinois to just be a little bit better than Tennessee. If Tennessee had Brazil playing, I'd be a little bit nervous. I would. But I think with the opt outs they have, I like Illinois' chances because their quarterback is, or its quarterback rather, is going. If it was Ethan Hampton, I would totally be taking Tennessee. But with Altmaier under center, I feel confident that Illinois can win the game. All right, let's talk about a crazy high school basketball score that I could not believe when I saw it. 104-1, Las Vegas high school basketball. Unbelievable. As of 20 hours ago, it's starting to get some traction. It was a girls' high school basketball game in Las Vegas, and it was Del Sol versus Cheyenne. And senior Rakana Taylor, 30 points in the game. She had 14 steals. Sophomore Gigi Pickens chipped in with 22 points and 8 steals, while Morgan White, Layla, Ray Davis, and Remy Alvarez had 10 points apiece. I mean, this is a complete disaster. I don't understand how the referees just didn't call mercy rule at halftime, or the coach was just like, look, the game is out of reach. We can't win. This is not competitive. I totally don't understand. And I did not think I'd be talking about California girls high school basketball on this show. But that is one thing that I saw for this week, the most wacky score I've ever seen. All right, Zain Zinger. We're going back to my roots now. We're going to briefly talk about Illinois high school football. Apparently, there was a new proposal that is going to expand the Illinois high school football state playoffs beginning next year. Let's take a look at a story about it, because this is a high button issue. This is a high button issue in my community specifically, and communities all over the state. But let's take a look here. So they're going to expand the playoffs by 128 teams. All right, let's take a look at this. So this is according to NBC5, and this is what it means. All right, so the Illinois High School Association announced this week that its football playoffs will expand with 128 new teams taking part in the postseason. All right, so let's talk about this. So it's going to be 16 first-round byes, and it's going to be played 1 week earlier, and the season is going to begin on August 20th as opposed to the traditional August 27th. So that's very interesting. And it says, according to Shaw Media reporter Steve Susi, under the new expanded format, all teams with at least 3 wins would have reached the playoffs in 2025. And had the expanded field been in place, nearly half of IHSA's 2 and 7 teams would have also reached the postseason. Okay, I'm just going to say this. I think this is an insult. I really do. And I hate to be that guy, and I hate to be that, competition guy to come in here and give my 2 cents. But when I was in high school, you needed 5 wins to guarantee yourself a playoff spot. You had something to play for. You needed 5 wins. You needed X number of playoff points to get in. And now, to me, it seems like it's a free-for-all. And I don't think that that's right. In competitive sports, you got to qualify for the playoffs because it sets a precedent, because some of these guys are going to go off to college and they're going to potentially be, depending on how good their teams are, qualifying for a CFP bid. And I just think that that's wrong, that we're starting at the high school level to see these teams that, quite frankly, don't deserve to get in. They win 2 games, 3 games. They're only beating lesser opponents. Now are the quality of wins just not going to matter? Like, I don't understand this. Now they're going to have 9-0 teams playing 2 and 7 or 3 and 6 teams. For what merit? The 3 and 6 team doesn't have a chance unless the area you're playing in, doesn't have roster retention from the year before or whatever. I just think it's totally wrong, and I think it's short-sightedness. And a lot of people are calling it, a participation trophy type of change. And I could not agree more. and I think it's wrong. And I think these good teams, and I happen to be in a area where my high school football alma mater is actually good. I think these good teams need to ensure that, okay, we're a good team. We need to keep a standard. We can't drop off and go 5-4 or 4-5 or 3-6, because that's going to reflect bad on us just to satisfy this new change. So that's just my opinion. I understand you got to get more teams in the playoffs. It builds camaraderie, but to lose in the first round by 40 or 50 points to a superior team, I don't know if that's worth it or not. All right, Zan's errors. We had one brief one, but we corrected it quickly. I think I missaid a team or something like that. But overall, though, a solid show. All right. With that being said, we don't have a banner for this, but I might as well just pop this up now. Programming note. So the first episode of 2026 will be Friday, January 9th, 2026, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. Let's briefly talk about the future of the show. 2026, same format as usual. We're probably going to have more interviews to come in the new year. We had a lot of good interviews this year. We had, in fact, a ton. We had a lot of RAF interviews, and we got to speak to Michael Chandler. We get to talk to Chad Mendez. We get to talk to Clay Guida, Bellamere, Bo Bassett. A bunch of cool interviews, a bunch of cool stuff. So we're hoping to do more of that stuff on the horizon. We may expand to do more football style interviews as well. I have some things potentially in the pipeline for that, which I don't really want to discuss at the moment because nothing is concrete, but it should be a fun year. And again, programming note, Bando's Breakdowns, episode 72, the first episode in 2026, 3 Eastern, noon Pacific. Do not miss. And with that, that's going to do it for the year. This is a bow on 2025. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Just a few final reminders. Listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, you know the drill there. And of course, you can subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell, and turn on all that stuff and help us get to 4,000 watch hours. YouTube.com/ETB Network, where you can listen to this episode and the full archive of every show across the network. So stay tuned for more content to come in the new year. All right, for everybody here at the UTB Network, my name is Zain Bando. This has been a fun year. It's been a really great ride with you guys as we inch closer and closer to 100 episodes in the weeks and months to come. But until next time, we will see you soon. Have a good one. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. Have a great one, and we will catch you in 2026. Thanks again.